Let me ask you something. What's the most important verse in the Bible? If there's one passage, one thought, one value that encapsulates for you the essence of Judaism, if you had to give an elevator pitch from the bottom floor to the top floor, what would you say is the master Jewish idea from which everything else flows? I'm asking you. All you smart people. All right, there you go. Good. Who said that? Good. The ancient rabbis debated this very question. There are well over 20,000 verses in the Hebrew Bible and over 300,000 words. Our sages realized that hardly anyone could have the time or the intellectual capacity to study each of them in depth. And furthermore, post-biblical Judaism is like a bottomless, confusing, and swirling sea of information and expectations. No one, even the most brilliant and conscientious scholar, can keep everything about Judaism clear in their minds all day, every day. And in any case, given the mountains of Jewish demands, their 613 mitzvot, obligations that every Jew is commanded to observe, how can we keep everything straight in our minds, let alone prioritize them? Isn't not murdering someone more important than not mixing wool and linen fibers in a garment? Isn't not stealing more important than not eating a cricket? Isn't the exhortation of Amos, let justice roll down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream? Nobody mentioned that, by the way. Isn't that a more significant verse than the one from Genesis? And Timnah was a concubine to Eliphaz, the son of Esau. The sages debated this very question. What is the one master idea of Judaism that stands at the pinnacle of Jewish values? Now I'm asking, anybody want to suggest another answer? That was a good answer. What? One God. Good. Really good. Oh, I got all these smart people here. Huh? Excellent. You guys remember this. So let me tell you this one remarkable midrash. Shimon ben Azai said, Klal Gadol b'Torah. The central unifying principle of Judaism is this verse from the book of Genesis. Zeh Sefer Toldot Adam. This is the book of the chronicles of humanity. God created human beings in the likeness of God. Ben Azai thought that this was the central unifying organizing principle of Judaism because it promoted the unity of the human creature. If all were created in the image of God, thus all human beings are of equal worth and equal sanctity, and every other Jewish value flows from this principle. Shimon ben Zoma disagreed. There is an even greater unifying principle, he taught, and cited the verse from the book of Deuteronomy. Who said the Shema? Over here. Somebody said it. You all know it, right? We said it. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Eternal is our God, the Eternal is one. Ben Soma thought that this was the central unifying principle of Judaism because if every human being were to recognize the sovereignty of God, they would live their lives in accordance with God's moral laws. Shimon ben Nanas disagreed. And he said there's an even greater unifying principle. And he cited the verse from Leviticus, now often described as the Golden Rule. Somebody said that over here. You all know it, right? Ve'ahavta l're'echa kamocha. You shall love your fellow as yourself. Ben Nanas considered this the great unifying verse because if each of us treated the other as they would want to be treated, or to state it in the reverse, as Jewish scholars said, what is hateful to you, we do not do unto others, then injustice and unfairness would disappear from the world and peace would reign. Immorality spreads because we do unto others that which we would never allow others to do unto us. Other traditional passages suggest the biblical verses urging justice, loving kindness, mercy, humility, honesty, and truthfulness, that these constitute the central organizing principle of Judaism. For example, according to the Talmud, the prophet Micah established all of Judaism upon three fundamental principles. Nobody mentioned that yet. Remember the verse from the prophet Micah? What was it? It has been told to you what God requires, only this, only this. Do justice, love mercy, walk humbly with your God. According to this view, manifest justice, mercy, and humility, and everything else about Judaism follows. For contemporary Jews, these rabbinic debates are comforting. The sages felt that the most important principles of Judaism center around our ethical obligations towards fellow human beings. And even those who argued that belief in God is the basic principle assume that this fidelity will ensure proper moral behavior towards others. But at the end of the Midrash, we read this astonishing assertion. Shimon ben Pazi said there is an even greater unifying principle, more vital than justice, righteousness, mercy, humility, honesty, equality, love of neighbor, or even faith in God. It's encapsulated in a verse from the book of Exodus. Et הכבש האחד תעשה בבוקר, ואת הכבש השני תעשה בין הערביים. One lamb shall be offered as a daily sacrifice in the morning, and one lamb shall be offered in the evening. And the Midrash concludes with these words, Halacha ke ben Pazi. The law follows ben Pazi. What? You have all these grand ethical principles in the Bible? Monotheism, equality, justice, humanity, mercy, loving kindness, righteousness, freedom, fairness, moral living. And Ben Pazi pulls out an obscure verse that seemingly means nothing. Sacrifice one lamb in the morning and one lamb at twilight every day, and this is the central unifying principle of the Torah? By the time he uttered this, the temple had long been destroyed, and the sacrificial system was permanently eliminated from Jewish practice. No one was sacrificing animals, nor was there an expectation of reviving the practice. So what was he thinking? And what were the sages thinking in affirming that Ben Pazi was right? Why would a verse detailing the sacrifice of one lamb in the morning and one in the evening be considered the most important verse in the Bible and the governing principle upon which all of Judaism is based? I'm asking you. What? It's a metaphor. Good. I'll give you my explanation. You come and you tell me why you think I'm wrong. The reason I think is that all the high and noble principles of life are irrelevant unless they're turned into daily practice. Nothing great, nothing permanent, and nothing substantial exists without habit, routines, hard work, and discipline. Values need behavioral frameworks. They cannot thrive in a vacuum. It's not enough to have an abstract relationship with an ethical principle like justice. We need to habituate ourselves constantly, consistently, and continuously in the work of justice. In the morning and in the evening, when we wake up and when we lay down. It's not enough to think of doing good or to speak of doing good. We must do good. And we need a disciplined daily framework that will ritualize, symbolize, and concretize goodness. Ben Pazzi didn't reject his colleagues' ethical aspirations. To the contrary, he yearned for a better, more just world as much as they. But he insisted that love, justice, mercy, faith, liberty are not sustainable unless we bring the daily offerings supporting our moral aspirations. It's not enough to think about or even read about morality. Values must be pursued through behavior. As no one becomes a good musician without practicing music, no matter their innate talents, and no one becomes a good doctor without practicing medicine, no one becomes a good athlete without training, no one becomes a good writer without writing, so no one becomes a good person without doing good day after day after day. As you cannot become a good chef simply by reading cookbooks, so you cannot become a good person simply by reading philosophy or self-help books. That's very popular nowadays. The same goes for Judaism itself. If you want to understand Judaism, you can get something out of books. But if you want to be a Jew, you need to do Jewish daily and with discipline. One lamb in the morning and one at twilight. For Jews, it's the deeds that count the most. God is in heaven and you are on earth, Rabbi Ishmael taught. Therefore, let your words about God be few and your deeds many. In Judaism, a good person is defined not by what she thinks, but by what she does. Piety is in performance. Good intentions are desirable, but good outcomes are required. Action is the result of every sound philosophy. Action is eloquence. We need to practice morality, not merely think about it. We need to habituate ourselves daily to moral living and train ourselves daily for moral discipline, because in the real world, it is not altruism, but duty and habit that motivate most people, according to Jews. The word mitzvah in Hebrew doesn't simply mean a good deed, but describes obligation, commandment, a sense of duty, the law of moral behavior. Over time, habits change our way of thinking. Our brains are reconfigured by doing. For example, Maimonides taught that it's better to give one coin to the poor on 1,000 different occasions than 1,000 coins all at once, because the act of giving tzedakah day after day after day for 1,000 days trains us and disciplines us to do acts of goodness. And even if we don't understand why we're giving away this money, and even if we disagree, Judaism insists, do it anyway. In the meantime, you've done a good deed, and perhaps over time you'll come to understand. Your brain will be reconfigured. Mitoch shelo lishma, ba lishma, states the Talmud. From something that started out as having nothing to do with good intentions, through the act of doing, the motivation to do good is born. And now we know that modern science has finally caught up with ancient Jewish wisdom. The most popular class in the history of Yale is on happiness. Anybody here take that course? Oh, do you tell me if I'm accurate? I didn't take it. I only read about it. The university scrambles to find lecture halls large enough to contain all of the eager students who yearn to discover the secret elixir of life. Little do they know at this tender age that if they were to ever actually find happiness, they'd be miserable. Technically, the students at Yale register for a science class, positive psychology. This is the scientific study of positive human functioning and flourishing through an understanding of the factors contributing to a well-lived and meaningful life. Students are required to perform acts of kindness and form new social connections described as rewirement assignments. In other words, through action, discipline, and habit, science now asserts that we can actually rewire our brains. Finally, it's good to know that science has finally caught up with religion after all these years. Greatest religious minds of our species have been urging us to rewire our brains for eons. They insisted on performing acts of kindness, becoming accustomed, habituated to moral, magnanimous, and merciful deeds. They realized that the more we do, the more we accept the need for doing. Habits and routines influence philosophy. Jewish sages emphasize that what may have started out as an act without understanding, over time generates understanding. The habit of giving charity eventually changes the way we feel about charity. The habit of doing Jewish acts eventually changed the way we feel about Judaism. In other words, as positive psychologists might say, we are rewired Jewishly. In modern America, we talk a lot, we preach a lot, we admonish a lot, we cancel a lot. We do not emphasize enough that those who change the world, who really make a difference in the long run, are the ones who do the hard work and offer the daily sacrifice in exchange for slow and incremental progress. Kvasim Shnaim Leon. Tamid. One lamb in the morning, one lamb in the evening. Tamid, always. And we must also remind ourselves, and especially our young people, of the value of persistence in the face of inevitable disappointment and failure. The harder the goal, the more we'll fall short. Americans don't like failure. Everything about our culture glorifies what the public thinks is success. Look at all those wildly accomplished people on social media and see how deliriously happy everyone is. Look at all those smiling faces. There must be something wrong with me. Everyone is cheerful. Everyone is content. Everyone is thriving except me. In the biblical book of Proverbs, we read, Sheva yipol tzadik v'kam. The righteous one falls 7 times and gets up. To be righteous is hard. It involves daily frustration and many disappointments. Look at the history of our people. Look how many times we fell. In Judaism, we are measured not by how many times we fell, but by our ability to get up, to rebound from setbacks. And what distinguishes Jewish civilization is not that we stumbled over and over and over and over again, but that every time we fell, we got back up when other civilizations could not. Did you get a chance to watch a few of the Olympic races in the pool or on the track this summer? Some of you might have actually gone to Paris. The difference between a gold medal and no medal is often literally less than a blink of an eye. The great athletes are the ones who go back straight to training to find the additional 0.05 of a second that will make all the difference 4 years later. Only the top 3 competitors receive a medal, and only one gets the gold. It's an honor to participate, but there's no participation medal. There's no grading on a curve. The great ones of our species were prepared to fall and get up again and again and again. That's how we break through and overcome. The willingness to sacrifice, to put in the hard work, to persist in the face of setback is, in most cases, more important than native intelligence. Persistence is a skill. It can be learned, cultivated, and taught. Winston Churchill, a man acquainted very well with falling, purportedly said, "Success is going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm." And remember, especially you young people, remember, those judging us can also be wrong. They too are flawed human beings. At the seminary, Martin Luther King earned C's in public speaking. Martin Luther King. Apparently, some of his white professors didn't appreciate his black Baptist speaking style. They didn't understand it or approve of it. Good thing for America that King didn't lose his enthusiasm for public speaking. We must develop in ourselves a sense of mission and purpose that will steel us from the inevitable disappointments we will encounter. Our daily sacrifices must have meaning for us. We must believe them to be important. The 2 lamb offerings were not merely mechanical, robotic acts. They fulfilled a higher purpose to serve God. Why does it matter? This is the question we must constantly raise and encourage young people to ask. Why does it matter? What purpose does it serve? What grand idea consumes you and encourages you to go beyond yourself? Even amidst all the crassness and trivialities of life, people are still inspired by the call to conscience, to rise above themselves and act on behalf of others, even contrary to their own interests. Why does it matter? In many ways, this 4-word question defines the human task. It can lead to evasion, equivocation, and prevarication, but also to dedication, devotion, and duty. Be among those who make a difference. Every action counts. We do the best we can in the corner of life we occupy, one person, one moment, and one place at a time. There are many things in life we cannot control. We didn't choose which era we live. We had no say about when we were born. We didn't choose our parents. We cannot change the past. What was done was done. But we can influence the present. This tiny window granted to us within the infinite expanse of time and space. Use the time allotted to you for good. Make a difference in the world. Do not fear life. Stay cheerful, optimistic, and resilient. These are anxious and difficult days. All the more reason to do the daily work. The spiritual high of Yom Kippur wears off quickly. Our New Year's resolutions will likely evaporate within days. We are left with the ordinary, the daily routines that in many ways define our ambitions and accomplishments. Inspiration comes and goes. It is routine discipline over a long period of time that makes all the difference. And in this way, the ordinary becomes extraordinary. And the setbacks we endure can over time, be transformed into things of high and enduring value. Offer the daily sacrifices. Make the effort. Once in the morning, once in the evening, tamid, always, permanently, every day. It's the most important verse in the Bible. Yom Kippur is not only about making the world right. First and foremost, it is about making ourselves right. Get yourself right. And then, together, we can fashion a better world.